Hello, everybody. Welcome back, family. Hi, everybody. Well, so many of you got snow. That is so crazy. I saw a picture just a minute ago of Heather's house. It looks like she got a foot of snow. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you. Today we are doing clue number 8. Y'all, this might have been obvious for you as we were doing both clue number 2 and clue number 6 that we were going to put these together. That's what we're doing today. This week is a sewing clue. It's so great to see you. Thanks for hanging out with me. Huge thank you to my moderators. Thank y'all so much. I surely do not want to go live without my moderators, so I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yes, we have a contract on a house. Woohoo! Yes. We'll talk more about that towards the end of today's video if you want to stick around and hear about our house ventures. I know many of you have been following our journey for, it's been a little while now, looking for a new home. Pressure is off. We have found a new home. We go tomorrow for a home inspection, so I get to measure rooms and kind of be able to plan out some furniture. All right, everybody, let's switch on over to the cutting mat. We're going to take a look at clue number 8. Our 8th week already. Just to let you know, a little hint about next week's clue. We will be cutting and sewing next week. And then the week after that is an applique clue. So week 9 is a cutting and sewing. Week 10 is an applique clue. And so I almost thought that next week I might combine clue number 9 and 10. I'm still thinking about it, but that is my plan so far. Okay, so just give you a heads up. Here we are, clue number 8. We're working with clue number 2 and clue number 6. So we're going to gather all of those pieces. I think we should have, yes, 32 of each one of these, right? 32. And I just started putting them all in the same bag at this point. So I will have to sort them out because I've mixed them up at this point, right? So we have those and those. Let me find a couple more dark ones. I'm not going to pull them all out. We're not sewing them all during our live today, but we're going to work with some of them. Here we go, y'all. And one thing that I wanted to note, because I'm going to bring in a finished block right here. Here's a finished one. One thing I wanted to note that I did not put on this sheet is this finished unit that we're sewing together this week should measure 6.5 by 6.5. Okay, so you'll take your finished block and you'll put it on a cutting mat or you'll use a ruler, and if you need to square it up and trim a little extra off, you want to square it up to 6.5 by 6.5. That is the finished size of this particular unit. Oh, it's so great to see y'all. Wow, so many of y'all are getting snow. I think we're supposed to have rain for a part of today, and then it's supposed to clear up. So this is how we're arranging them, right? Dark, dark, light, light, just like that. So it actually comes together as a simple 4-patch, right? And I think the only thing you really need to make sure and pay attention to is that you have these orange peels going in the right direction, because it's really easy to accidentally turn them around as you're going to the sewing machine, right? So they should all be pointing towards the center. And they go together just like that. Now we're going to make sure to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if your block is coming up short, check your 1/4 inch seam allowance before moving on. So I would suggest doing one block and check the finished size. If it measures 6.5 by 6.5, you're good to go with the rest of them, right? If you're a little short, let's figure out why before you sew together all the rest. Pardon me. One thing I wanted to note, if you're coming up short and you're pressing your seam allowances to one side instead of pressing them open, try pressing your seam allowances on the next block you do open and see if that helps at all. Sometimes when I press my seams to the side, it eats up a little bit of space, and sometimes my blocks end up a tiny bit short. So that's just a recommendation. If it's coming up short, try pressing your seams open and see if that doesn't fix it. If not, you might want to back off of that 1/4 inch seam allowance just a little bit so that you do finish at the correct size. Oh, Jacqueline finally got her clues printed off. That's awesome. Okay, so I think this is going to be so easy, y'all. I'm not going to do a whole bunch with you today. I'm just going to do one block. How about that? My plan is to start just chain piecing these because I do think this clue, these blocks, will come together much faster if you were to chain piece them all, right? But for today's video, I'm going to do just this one with you. And I wanted to say one more thing too. Yes, at the end of this clue, you should have 16 of these 6.5 by 6.5 inch blocks. Okay? Karen said, or spin your center seam. Yes. I'm not that fantastic at spinning my center seams. I'm just not that great at it. All right, let's go on over to the sewing machine. Let me take a sip of this drink. I've been talking a little bit today, but not a lot. So we're going to have to get my voice on board with today's video. All right. Let me raise this needle up. I'm setting my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to bring over the first two pieces. Again, dark on the left, light on the right. And they should be pointing towards that center. And we just want to make sure that everything stays nice and straight. Lined up really straight. I'm going to bring that foot pedal over and we'll sew this first seam. And we'll bring over the next two blocks, right? And so the next two you bring over, the light should be on the left and the dark on the right, and they're pointing up towards that center. And we'll flip that one over and match up those raw edges. So now we have these two units, and I am going to go ahead and just press these seams before we move on. Sometimes I just go ahead and join them together, but let's go ahead and press these two seams. And on my first two blocks that I finished, I pressed my seams open and my block came out exactly right, 6.5 by 6.5. And so I do think it's going to be worth the time to go ahead and just open up those seams. Oh, let me get that. Sit down in there. There we go. I'm doing it at a weird angle. You see my cart's off to the side. I love that little iron, but she is finicky, seating her exactly right in that cradle. All right, so I'm just gonna flip these over towards the back, and I like to open up my seams, and I just start working them with my fingernails like that so that they kind of stay open on their own. Vicky, my bird, is doing good. He's downstairs getting spoiled by my parents. And I like to just press that seam from the back first. And then I'll flip it over and give it a good little press. There we go. We're going to let that cool off for a second. So again, at this point we have two pieces of this unit, right? And so the main thing to pay attention to is that we make sure we flip the two units around and have them dark and light, just like a cross, right? Or an X. And the most important part after that is making sure to line up the center seams together, right? So you could flip this over and put yourself a little pin right in that seam and connect those two seams so that they stay lined up. You could use a little binding clip. I'm just going to pinch it with my fingers as we just move right over to the sewing machine. And we're going to make sure that these edges of this block are nice and lined up from one edge all the way to the other. Okay, so let's bring that over. Debbie, I have not used it since the first time I used it. It has been so crazy here in my house. There's not been one moment where I've had a spare time to do anything with my new Scan and Cut except for testing it out one time. And it's just sitting there like teasing me. It's like, hello, don't you want to play with me? All right, again, we just want to make sure that those two seams right there are nice and lined up. And we're going to sew that seam with your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once I get past that little middle seam, I can kind of relax a little bit and then just make sure that the rest of this seam is nice and straight. Guess what? That's it for that's it for making one of these blocks. You're going to put together 16 of them, right? So let's open that up. See, I'm just really not good at spinning seams, so I'm just going to work it open just like that, and then work those seams open on both sides. And we're going to press that. It's so great to see y'all. Hi, everybody coming in. Look, you blink an eye and you're going to miss this week's clue. That's how fast this one's going to come together. I saw someone on Creative Crew already has all 16 blocks put together just since posting the clue this morning. So that's it. It comes together just like a 4-patch. Now let's take a look at my 3 examples. Because if you are an extreme perfectionist, this unit might drive you bonkers, right? Because all of the points are really supposed to come together and meet equally in the center. So I think you can just tell by looking down on this unit that the spacing is a little off on the points coming together, right? When I put my little orange peels on my block, I didn't measure them exactly quarter inch, and then place my units. I just sort of eyeballed them. That's going to give me a variance in my blocks, okay? So some of them are going to come together really perfectly, and some of them are going to be off a little bit, right? Do you see that? Looks different from this, right? And let's bring in this one. There we go. But here's my advice on this, or here's my 2 cents on this, right? Because I put these two together. I did these two yesterday, and I was like, oh, am I going to let that drive me to the point of redoing clue number 2 and clue number 6? No, I'm going to let it go, because in the big scheme of things, it's really not going to bother me that much when this quilt is all put together. And just the fantastic design with all the colors, I don't think that the spacing between these is going to bother me so much, right? And so, yeah, I'm going to overlook the fact that some of them don't come together exactly perfect. And that's what I'm going to do. Sheila said, no way, mine are going to be anywhere close to equal. I do think if you took the time, you know, and maybe this, you know, if that's something that bothers you, and I'm just trying to find a little ruler. If that's something that bothers you and you haven't started, or you're still working on clue 2 and clue 6, and you want them to really come out exactly perfect, when you're placing your orange peels on the background for either clue 2 or 6, I think the best thing to do would be to equally measure out and mark to find the true center on the diagonal, right? Or you could fold it on the diagonal and give yourself a crease, and then fold your applique orange peel together and make a crease, and then line them up that way, which would take a little bit longer in the construction of 2 and 6, but I do believe it would give you a very accurate placement for all of these, right? I just sort of eyeballed it, and in doing that, I do have some variances in my spacing. But here's another thing. I have never, ever, ever, and I've made a lot of quilts, probably not even close to the number of quilts that some of you have made. I personally have never, ever made a quilt that every single unit in that quilt came out exactly perfect. I always have a little, you know, willy-nilly something going on here and there, and I think in this quilt, my spacing will be my willy-nilly in this quilt. Yeah, Virginia said nature isn't perfectly lined up either. Yes, that's right, Hazel. That's right. Oh, Yolanda said could always put a little round something in the center. Yes, I mean, if that really, really bothered you, you could always revisit some of the applique we're doing in this quilt and maybe replicate that right in the center. That would be gorgeous, actually. Maybe some buttons or some kind of accent sewn into the center would be lovely too. Donna said, I may applique a center over the points if I find lots are off. Yeah, I think that's a really great and easy fix. And Karen makes a really good point. When you look at it from 5 feet away, you'll never see those tiny little space variations. And Mimsy said willy-nilly adds charm. It does. It does. And again, once you get them all made and you start lining them up, right? I really just don't know that I'm going to focus on it so much. But isn't that fantastic? Isn't that so pretty? Right? Isn't that great? So yeah, you'll have 16 of these. And I do think, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you chain piece them, right? You just start an assembly line and you have all of these lined up and then you have all these lined up. As long as you're paying attention to the direction when you go to flip and sew, right? Because half of them are going to go like that and then half of them are going to go like that. I do think this clue is going to come together very quickly, which is fantastic because after this weekend, I'm still working on clue number 4. I just have not had any extra time. Becky said, is it possible to make 1 unit of those 4 orange? Yeah, so, if that's a good question. If you haven't, I mean, the nature of the quilt is it's a mystery quilt, right? And so releasing that as a clue and releasing that as a clue, that's just part of fun as, the mystery quilt. But if you're waiting till the very end, or you're still considering whether to start this quilt or not, or if you're watching this 5 years down the road and you're like, oh, I want to do this, but is there another way? You could cut a 6.5 by 6.5 background of your A fabric and then cut out all your orange peels and arrange them on your 6.5 by 6.5, and then you can line up the placement perfectly right in the center. You just want to make sure that you have the 1/4 inch gap at your corners because that's going to be sewn in to join this unit to something else. Hazel Ann said, what do you mean clue? So Hazel Ann, we're doing a mystery quilt. So we're on clue number 8 today. Clue number 8. And if this is your first video that you're catching, right, jump down to the description box. Because there is a link in the description box that pulls up the whole playlist. And you can go back to the very beginning and you can work your way through all the clues up until now. And yeah, and check it out. So clue number 8, we're just doing this quilt in sections. And for everybody, it's a mystery until we reveal the clue and put it together. Kim just finished one and it's 6.5 square. Good for you, Kim. That is awesome. Don't you love it? Like the first one, I always, I mean, I've done the math. I know it's supposed to finish at 6.5 by 6.5. But the first one I sewed together, I'm like holding my breath the whole time and pressing it and then measuring it. And I'm like, whoo, it's 6.5 by 6.5. Donna is waiting until the end. I think that's really smart, especially if you're changing the color schemes at all, right? And then you can pick and choose where your colors go if you're changing the colors. So I have my 3 finished units, and let's see, I have 13 left to go. I still have not, here's how bad the time has been for me. Y'all know last week we were piecing together borders, right? And there was 4 complete borders from last week, and I sewed 2 together with you. And the other 2 I said I would do sometime during the week. They're still waiting. They're still waiting. But the good news is, after tomorrow, I think things should equal out, just sort of equalize for a little bit and slow down. until our move. Lulu said, it's interesting that the minute you set the 3 squares together, I no longer could see the points because I focused on the circles it made. Yeah, isn't that pretty awesome about the orange peel block, right? So if you were to put it together like this, mind you, we have the seam allowances in there. Isn't that pretty awesome how that circle just takes form like that? I've always loved the orange peel in a quilt. I've made several of them for some clients using the orange peel clothing. I would do that part out of clothing. Glenda, you'll be fine. Your blocks will be great. Oh yeah, so Sherry said, if chain piecing, the layout on the pairs are all exactly the same until you sew them in 4. See, I might be overcomplicating things in my head. Let's take a look. Because she's probably right. Sherry's always usually right about everything. Let's see. So we have those 2. And then we have these 2. And she makes very excellent points. So if you were to just rotate these around, it would be the same. So you can stack up all your dark and all your light. And I think the most important part then is just to make sure that they come in towards the center, right? Like that. You can sew them all together. And then, after pressing the seams, you just take 2 and you flip them around like that. Thank you, Sherry. I do always have a way of overcomplicating things. So yeah, I do think that this should go pretty fast. And I was looking ahead at clue 9. And I think clue 9 is going to take me a minute. But then clue 10 is going to go by so fast. So I do think that combining clue 9 and 10 into 1 week next week will work out and keep some of you busy because, you know, many of you are pretty quick with the applique and it's just a few little pieces for week number 10, okay? So I think many of you would knock out that clue in like half an hour. So I think combining those 2 weeks will be really good, and it'll also shorten up the duration of the mystery quilt by a week, and which might work really well for us too because it looks like we might be closing on both houses possibly a week sooner than what we had expected. So we shall see. We'll see. Sylvia said, I've been rewatching your videos on applique on the wall garden you did tool. That's what I'm looking at now. Oh, that was such a fun quilt to do. That was a lot of work because I did both the smaller one and the larger one at the same time. Ooh, you just got your scan and cut. That is so exciting. I hope you have more time than I do to play with it. Gail said, put me out of my misery. Which house, the one you like or the one your husband liked? Guess what, Gail? Okay, so that's That's the clue for this week, right? That's easy peasy, even if you're extremely beginner sewing a 4-patch together. You've done all the hard work up until this point, right? That's easy peasy. So, Miss Gail, last Friday when I was live, yeah, I mentioned that we were going to go look at a house as soon as we were done. And that was my favorite house. And then Saturday, we were looking at a house, and that was Harlan's favorite house. But it's so funny because, you know, up until that point, you're just looking at pictures on your phone, or you're looking at pictures on the computer. And pictures can be very tricky because they can tell a story, and you get a feeling from the pictures one way, but then when you're actually there in person, it feels totally different, right? So, just a little backstory. The house we were going to see Friday was my favorite. It's the original part of the house was built in 1910. So, and it has 2 additions, and the house is yellow, and it's a restored farmhouse, and it's just simply lovely. Like, it has my name written all over it. One of the things we wanted as far as houses go is a addition for my parents with a kitchen area and a place for my studio that was on the first floor that had access from outside the home, right? So those are things that, you know, those were must-haves and really kind of controlled what houses we looked at and didn't look at, or said maybe about. So the one we went to Friday, I loved it. One of the other things that we really kind of wanted, or Harlan really wanted, was some property with the house. And so that house only had 2 acres. And the house we were going to look at Saturday had 24 acres. I think that was it. And that one was more, it looked, instead of a farmhouse, it more had the look of like sort of a lodge kind of feeling by looking at the pictures. And so that one he was super excited to go see. So Friday we went to my house, and when we got there, he fell in love with it. As soon as we pulled in the driveway, he loved it. He loved everything about it. And then, but we didn't make up our mind, and we were going to give Saturday's house a fair shot, right? And Harlan was super excited to go, but when we got to the house on Saturday, it just had a different feeling. Like the rooms felt different than what they were portrayed in the pictures, and they were accurate pictures. It's just sometimes when you're in the room itself, it just feels differently. And I could tell he was super disappointed walking through the house. And while the 24 acres would have been lovely, and, you know, there were trails for 4-wheelers and stuff, and he loved that, you could just tell he was super disappointed walking through the house. It just didn't feel the same as what he thought it was going to. And so after that, it was an easy decision, right? And I didn't have to twist. I didn't have to convince. We were both on the same page after that. So, yeah. Have y'all seen the pictures on Creative Crew? I posted a picture of the house yesterday. She's an old farmhouse with 2 additions. My parents will have a section all to their own, and there's a set of glass French doors that separate their section and ours. So, like, we can walk by the doors and just wave at them, and they can wave at us. But they can also just join us, or we can join them very easily. We don't have to go outside to visit them. They're just right through the doors. I do have pictures if you want to see. The only pictures I have is the outside of the house and what my studio will be. So here's the thing. I always feel like every house we look at, there's like really strong positives, and then there's some things that, you know, we have to either concede with and settle on. But I'm totally okay with this. My studio at our new house is considerably much smaller than what I have now. And you know what? I'm so okay with that. I really am. This studio, I get my steps in. And really, they're the only steps I do, except when I walk downstairs to get a drink or if I go do something, right? Predominantly, I live in my studio all day. And so if I need to walk to my printer, it takes a lot of steps to get to the printer and back, right? So those are my steps in for the day. But this will be predominantly smaller. Donna, it is an hour away from where we live now. I am in Williamsburg, Virginia, and we are moving to Matthews. So it's about an hour away from here. Linda, it has my name written all over it, doesn't it? It really does. And so yeah, the house is way less to clean. The whole entire house is way less. I mean, it looks kind of big just from the pictures, but it's actually, the whole thing is like 1,200 square foot smaller than our current house. So the whole thing is a lot less to clean. 1,200 square foot, that's a lot of square foot. But one of the cool things about this house, and I'll just pull it up because do you want to see it? In this house here that we're in, there are 2 rooms, specifically larger rooms of this house that we never used. Right now we're using them because all of our furniture almost is packed away in a pod. But for 3.5 years living here, there were 2 rooms that we never even used. But yet we had to vacuum and clean them and dust them, you know, and we just never used them. We'd pay to heat them and cool them because of the open floor plan, right? But we just never occupied and used the room. And so we're really not going to be or feel like we're losing square footage because every room will have a purpose in our new house and will be used. Lulu said, my whole house is 1,200 square foot. That was the size of our previous house before this one. So it's like losing that amount of square foot in our move. And I'm totally fine with that. Absolutely. Let me show you. I should have took pictures of the inside of the house because it has the original pine wood floors. It just looks like quilts are meant to like live all in this house, right? It really does. So this is the house right there. I'll just let that come up on the screen. So even though it looks really big, it is way less space than the house we are currently in. It's just the way that it's sort of laid out, right? Our part of the house will be the original part of the house, which is the 2-story. And then to the right of the 2-story, you see my little quilting studio there. See that? With an outside access door, just like I wanted. My parents' section of the house is to the left. It looks like a 2-story, but really the window that looks like the 2nd story is just an attic space. So they're all on 1st level, and there's a ramp So if my mom would rather use the ramp than the stairs, she can do that. And their door goes straight into their living space. Isn't that fantastic? I think that's fantastic. It does look huge, but it's just the picture and the way that it's all laid out. The original part of the house, well, they've, done updates and stuff to it, was built in 1910, a farmhouse. So the upstairs rooms, like our bedroom, is not even half of the size of our current bedroom in this house. And we just love it. It just feels so homey and so quaint, right? But the rooms are predominantly smaller in our section of the house. And we could not be happier. And so this was Friday night when we pulled up into the driveway. We left shortly after the live last Friday so we could drive by during the day. But our viewing of the house wasn't until 6:30 and it was dark. So when we actually pulled up, this is what we saw. And it was just so pretty. Donna, so this house is 3,000 square foot all together. Like our section of the house, my parents, and the studio. And then I'll show you my studio. So right now they call it the Pelican Pub. That's what they call it. You can see the pelicans. This house is kind of near the water. And Matthews is very much a waterman's community, right? Lots of fishing and crabbing and things like that. And so lots of elements, the way they decorated was very nautical. And I'm supposing, because you see a freezer and a refrigerator, and behind the counter there is like a wine cooler and lots of beverages in this room. They called this the Pelican Pub. I'm calling this, I made a name for it now, I can't remember. Quilt Pub or something cute like that, right? And again, the pictures are kind of deceiving because when you're standing in this space, it actually feels bigger than what the pictures look, but it is way much smaller than what I have now, for sure. So that's as you walk in from the inside of the house. Whoopsies. And this is looking from the other side of the room towards the house. So the red door walks into the dining room of our house. And there's doors on the front and on the back side of my studio. And I know the long arm will fit. I'm just wondering if I want it to fit or if I want to put it in the bedroom upstairs and give myself a little bit more floor space. I guess those are decisions I'll make. I'm going tomorrow for the home inspection, so I'm going to measure the spaces and see the arrangement. But y'all, what do you see? There's no space for my design wall, or not a permanent one. So I will be cutting my design wall into sections and taping it together so that it folds up like an accordion. So if I need to use the design wall, I'll still have it, and it will only be put up when I'm designing a quilt, and then I can fold it back down and store it away. So like that's the only bummer, is that there isn't a solid wall big enough to do the design wall. And again, I'm okay with that, right? Lots of us have smaller studios and craft rooms that we work in, and we make it work, right? And to be honest, I have not used my design wall for laying out a quilt in about 2 months. And so yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. And this is behind the counter. So The freezer is going to come out. The wine cooler is going to come out. All the bottles, you'll see I have that shelf space. There's plenty of space for printers and heat presses and thread storage, all kinds of fun stuff. Yep, this is in Virginia. Christine said that's a lot of stair climbing if you put it upstairs. Actually, some. So currently I have 3 quilts that I need to quilt for clients. And to be really honest, so when I'm doing a quilt, it's great that the long arm is in the room with me. But being really honest, and I'm just going to switch back over here. When I'm quilting, especially a customer's quilt that, I'm already anxious about anyway, I don't walk away from the long arm. So I sit there, even though you can, and technically you could walk away from it, right? And do something else and multitask your time, which I love. That's my thing. I'm really good at multitasking. But it just seems like whenever I do that and walk away from it, there's a problem. So specifically, if I'm long arm quilting a client's quilt, I stay with it at least until it's done with a pass. And if I need to walk away, I will do that again, before I start on the next pass. But usually I just sit there and just work it, and advance the quilt and let it do its thing. And I'm usually there with it until I'm done. And then I could go back downstairs with the finished quilt, right? Brenda said, would it fit where all the bottles are? It might, Brenda, but I kind of really like that counter space because I have several printers and heat presses, and I thought that counter would be really great to put the heat presses on, and I could pack orders up there. So I don't know. So many possibilities, right? I don't know. I would tell you, if I am not using the long arm, do you want to know the greatest use for the long arm? If it's not in use, which it's not in use every day, it has a really long table, and I can set stuff on the table. So when I use the long arm, I don't know that I'll mind going upstairs, and it will have to share a room with the guest room, right? We're okay with that. Oh, Marcy said, put your design wall on a hinge and have it swing down from the ceiling. That's a great idea. So when would you move? We are looking, so Harlan has a work trip, and it was sort of unconfirmed for a long time, and then they just confirmed it like 2 days ago. He is going. And so that kind of threw our dates off. And we were looking to close on April 26th. Well, if you count the weeks of our mystery quilt, I really wanted to close after the 28th, because the 28th would be our last day, clue number 15. But because of his work trip, they're pushing it maybe a week earlier or the week after he gets back. So it's all very up in the air. What I'd really, really, really like to do is finish up all the clues before we move. So like next week, I'm combining 2 clues, which, I mean, I've really looked at the clues. I don't know that it's like overwhelming amount of work. But I'd really like to combine those 2 clues, and that'll bring us a week earlier, because I just don't want to leave you hanging. Do you know what I'm saying? Jackie, that's a really good point. Terry said, which house in the photo are you buying? I don't know that I shared any more than one house. I'll pull it up on the screen so you can see. This is all the same house. It's all this house right there. The pictures that I showed of the little studio, or what I'm claiming as a studio, if you look to the right side of the house, you see the little section of house there with a window and a door. That's that section of the house. That's my little studio. I think with my current design wall, what I'm going to do is, let's see, get rid of that, come back here. So my current design wall is two big panels of the insulation board, right? And I did the thick one. It's like 1.5 inches or 2 inches thick. It's two, was it 2 or was it 4? I think it's 2, it's been so long now, 2 long pieces that I just taped the center seam to. I'll have to revisit that. But my plan is to cut them in half, right? So there will be 4 sections that are equal size. And then tape them so that they both, the top comes down and then they fold backwards into one piece that I can unfold if I need it. That's my plan. We'll see. I'm not going to stress myself out, and I don't want to stress you out and put too much on one clue, right? I do think you can handle next week. Week number 10 is super simple, or clue number 10 is super simple. So I don't think it's going to be too much. I, for one, am still working on the clue number 4 and the borders from last week. And one of the things that I also wanted to mention is that I don't think I'll be hosting a Zoom this evening because I plan on hitting the bed pretty early. We have to be at that house early in the morning for a home inspection, and it's an hour away. So I do plan on hitting the bed early, and usually if I host a Zoom, I stay up late, and then it takes me some time to unwind after that. And so that's the reason I'm not hosting a Zoom this evening. Liz, yes. You can access it from the front, or you can walk around the studio and come in through the back door. Or you can come in through the house, through the dining room. And I'm going to have my own little refrigerator, which I might just end up giving to Harlan to put in his, workshop. Because I don't think I need a refrigerator in there. And that's just space. Because look, see all those crates with the fabric? That's got to go somewhere. And I think that's more important than having my own little refrigerator out there. So y'all are so sweet. I know y'all are very flexible. Y'all are so easy. So yep, that's it. We're done with the house hunting and the searching, and our contract is ratified. We do home inspection tomorrow. And really, we just want to make sure everything's good and have an opportunity to learn more about the house and how things work. There is like a whole house generator. We do not know how that works. But it's nice to have, right? But we know nothing about it. So, that'll be awesome to learn about that stuff. So Brenda, right now there is a detached structure with a lean-to and a workroom, and then sort of a slanted space for all of the lawn equipment that has a sliding door, right? So he's going to take that as his office and space for his grass cutters and stuff. It's got a little front porch on it. It's so cute, and a little swing on the front porch. It's super cute, but it's definitely not big enough. And so as a perk for Harlan, since we don't have 24 acres, we just have the 2, he gets to have money to put in a larger building in the backyard. So that's our plan for him. He will have 2 structures. He'll have his detached office, and then he'll have a workshop in the back. So he is super excited too. Mary, we will definitely check the attic. The awesome thing is, so the people we're buying from, they bought the house like 13 years ago. And when they bought it, it was just the original farmhouse. And they came through and they did new windows, new siding, new roof, and all of the updates, the electrical updates, and all of that. They did keep the original hardwood floors, which I love. I'm so glad they did that. And then they had the 2 additions built, right? So we're expecting pretty good news tomorrow, since, 13 years ago really wasn't, it seems like a long time, but we'll see. Men need a workshop. He needs he needs something to a place for all his tools. He has so many things he likes to do anyway, right? Of course, he likes to do all the stuff in the yard, and that comes with equipment and tools, right? Just like we have equipment and tools with our stuff. But he also likes he makes my stitch frames for me. He loves to do woodworking stuff. He makes coin rings. He dabbles in all kinds of stuff. So he needs a good space to do that. So I'm excited for him. He's already been planning it out. And I'll look for raccoons. I will look. I will look for raccoons. You know what I did find out? Woodpeckers. Woodpeckers here at this house pecked a hole in our roof. Do y'all have woodpeckers where you live? If you do, and you hear that noise, you might want to go check to see if the woodpecker's on your roof. If he is, he's putting a little hole right into your shingles, causing a leak in your roof. Little sucker. I'll be in here working, and I'll hear, and I don't think nothing of it, because there's trees right there. If you look out my window right now, there's trees that go right up our driveway. And I've seen 2 different kinds of woodpeckers. And I've seen them in those trees. And so I just assume he's knocking on one of those trees, but no, he's knocking on our roof. So when the buyers of this house had a home inspection, we discovered in the attic space of my studio, the roof was wet. So Harlan goes up on the roof and finds a little hole where the woodpecker is pecking through the shingles. And we had to fix that. How do you stop the woodpeckers from pecking on your roof? Mary, really? You had raccoons in your attic? That's funny. We did have a carpenter bee that drilled a hole into our sunroom board we had to fix that. And you see those little guys, if you sit in our sunroom, which all of our chairs right now are in the sunroom. And that's the only place we have to sit right now until we move out. So we're sitting there and you can see the carpenter bees just buzzing around while he chewed a little hole in there, and we have to fix that. But I don't know how you stop the woodpeckers from pecking on the roof. We have lots and lots of trees, Christine. Like, that's not enough. Lemon oil. It would take a lot of lemon oil all over this roof, that's for sure. Ah, for carpenter bees. That's a good... I'll have to look into that. I'm telling you, the woodpeckers. So we had to fix that. And the roof on this house is scary, y'all. It is super slanted and steep, and it's really, really high. And Harlan's up there. He strapped himself in a rope and tied it to his Jeep, and my dad's out there tying knots in the rope, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I will be so glad when we're done with all of this. Oh, but he fixed it. I just don't like to know when he's up there if somebody's with him, you know. Donna, I think they're pecking looking for bugs, but I don't know. Ah, Sue said the woodpecker is going after bugs. Spray with something to get rid of the bugs. I'll have to look into it. I'm going to tell you, we're just ready to move. We really are. This house we're moving to takes us an hour to drive there from where we are right now. Kim said the pigeons wrecked our roof. Oh, what did they do to your roof, Kim? Ah, Jackie said we have trees everywhere. They go after bee larvae. Plus the sound the house makes evidently attracts a mate. What? That's crazy. I do think houses, you know, when they settle and when they probably do make a noise. I think, you know, differences in temperatures, like one day it's colder and one day it's warmer. And I do think, you know, the wood of the house structure expands and contracts. I mean, if you have settlement cracks in your house, you see during the winter, they're open, the cracks are bigger. And in the summertime with the humidity, the crack, you barely even see them, right? So I do think there is some movement there. That's interesting. Ah, put a plastic owl up there. That's a good idea, Vicki. But, so yeah, woodpeckers pecking holes in our roof. Ah, no way. It melted the shingles, Kim? Well, you know, it's not good for cars, so I would think in turn it's probably not good for anything it sits on, is it? So, for those of you who have just come in, today's clue went by really fast. It comes together as a 4-patch. And pretty simple. I'm pressing my seams open, and you want this 4 patch to measure 6.5 by 6.5, right? So if you're a tiny bit big, there's probably some space to square it up. And if you're coming in under 6.5, try pressing your seams open, or try reducing your 1/4 inch by a smidgen, just by a little bit, to see if that in turn gives you the true measurement of 6.5 by 6.5 when it's all together. That's funny, Rory. And here's the thing, I hear it all the time. It's just like knocking noise, like that. And I have actually grown to like the dang noise. And I think it's them in the trees right there. I'm like, oh, the woodpecker's here. Little suckers chewing a hole in our roof. I'm like, oh, the woodpecker's here. Had I known what he was doing, I would have been like shouting or knocking the ceiling or something. I'm like, oh, little woodpecker. That's funny. All right, y'all, that's really it for today. That is it. I was trying to think of some other things we could talk about before I go. I just don't know of anything. Sometimes it's really not good for me just to talk off the cuff and just ramble. What do y'all think of this quilt so far? As far as like difficulty level, that's something I've been really honestly curious about. I know for some of you, these clues have been super easy. Some of you are extremely new. As far as difficulty level, how would you say this quilt has been so far? Our house has a ratified contract on it. Yes, ma'am. We had a contract on this house before we found the house we're moving to. And that's always stressful, isn't it? Brenda, you think it's perfect. Aw. I'm loving it. I think it's good for a beginner. I was wondering about that. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, Beverly said, I'm anxious to see how it comes out. It's going to be so pretty. I think it's pretty, but I'm also a little biased since I designed it, but I think it's really pretty. You think it's been pretty easy. Good. Donna's first mystery quilt, fun and not difficult at all. Yay. You make everything easy to understand. I'm so glad. Good. Very easy. Okay, good. Now the comments are going by so fast I probably can't keep up with them. That's good. Mimsy said, the difficulty is my time and workspace. Love the clues, and only issue so far was the stem clue, not knowing how much fabric to designate. I totally understand that. Donna, I have no idea where this clue is going to go in the new house. I have no clue. You saw our portion of the house, right? The rooms are on the smaller side. It's so quaint, though. This quilt would probably look really fantastic on our bed. Maybe that's where it'll go, but it's kind of small for our bed. Maybe it'll be a bed topper because our bed is going to fill up our room anyway. That's the crazy thing, is that our bed in our current bedroom, like right now, is a king size bed, and it looks kind of small in our bedroom that we live in right now. But our bed in the new house fills up the bedroom. I don't know, there's not a wall space big enough for this clue to hang up. And originally when I designed this quilt, the crazy thing is, y'all, and this is how life goes, right? When I designed this quilt, it was designed specifically to go on a wall in my room downstairs in the family room. And the colors were picked out to coordinate with the rug in that room. And then we decided to move. We're bringing the rug with us, but I don't know that there's a room big enough to use the rug. And to be really honest, the floors are so pretty that I don't want to cover them up with the rug. I really don't. So, I don't know. I do think this quilt would be a perfect bed topper for our bed. And then, if I want to decorate accent colors in my bedroom, I could pick from the colors of this quilt, right? And just tie it in. Brenda said, my husband and I both are taller than you and your husband, and we have a queen size bed. We have to have room for our cats, Brenda. Where are the cats going to sleep if we downsize the bed? Actually, the king size bed, I don't know if it's any longer than the queen. I think it's just wider. Could be wrong. We just have more elbow room. That's all. That's so great, Liz. I'm glad you're having fun with the whole process. Sheila said you can have a NOS fridge. I know that's what I said. But if you walk through the two red doors, the kitchen's right there. So I'm thinking give Harlan the little refrigerator that's in there for his space outside, and have more space, because I like having my fabric where I can just see it and grab it and use it. So we'll see. Brenda said, I have 2 dogs and a twin bed. Oh, So Donna put the measurements up of the king size versus 60 by 72. That's good to know. I think our frame is like two twin beds put together side by side. I could be wrong. I don't know, y'all. All I know is it's really wide. But it's kind of good because I get hot at night. And I like a little space. And so does Harlan. Yep, Sue. My steps, instead of walking across the studio here, will be walking into the house to get to the fridge. All right, y'all. I don't really have anything else to say. I would just sit here and just chit-chat with you all day. I would. But I have 11 orders to sublimate today, this afternoon. And I'd really like to get them done so that tomorrow we're going to be out of the house a good part of the day anyway. So I'd really like to get a jump start on those sublimation things. Oh, here's something I could talk about real quick. I saved myself a trip to, I guess it would be the dealer. Anyway, my Bernina, Bernina, right there. There she is. She's a finicky thing. I have a Bernina B700 embroidery machine. Is that the number? Yes, B700. She only does embroidery. She doesn't sew. She's just set up for embroidery. And here lately, I've been using her to make the little quilt labels that I do custom quilt labels, you know, in my Etsy shop. Well, I have like several orders for them right now. So I was stitching out labels, stitching labels, right? And I was hearing this noise starting to happen. I'm like, that does not sound good. And it was getting louder and louder as the day progressed yesterday. And so the next layer, and I oil my machine per the specs of the manual, right? I know where the oil goes. I know the places. I know what to look for. So the last label I was doing yesterday, I was like, all right, I'm going to sit here and watch it stitch. Because usually that's something I can multitask with, right? I can set that up, and then I can come over here on the computer, and I can be right here sewing, and that's doing her thing with the labels. But the last one, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here and watch it because it doesn't sound like it's supposed to. So I set it up in the hoop, and I hit start, and the needle started to come down like this, and it went da-da-da, and then went down and started stitching. And I was like, what was that? And it was stitching okay, but it was making the noise, right? So I'm watching, and it went around and it did a basting stitch, and when it stopped, it cut the thread, and when the needle started to come up, it went da-da-da and came up, and I was like, what is that? So then I took the hoop off, right? And I'm like, okay, we're going to figure out what this is. So there's a screw on the side of the cover. I took that off. Everything looked good up there. And because I was thinking it was up in this top portion right there, since the needle was doing something funny, right? And when I listened up close, although there was noise from the bottom of the machine, there was also noise coming from right there. I'm like, well, maybe there's a thread stuck up in there or something, right? So I took that front cover off, and I was looking for threads. I don't see nothing. And then I took the bobbin case out and I did all the cleaning and the re-oiling, which I am really good about that, right? Looking for extra threads down there and I don't see nothing. So I put it all back together. I put the hoop back in and it sounds even worse than it did before I brushed everything out. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I come over here on the computer, right, and I'm Google searching right here on my computer. And I pulled up Bernina Jeff on YouTube. Thank you, Bernina Jeff. If y'all know Bernina Jeff, tell him I said thank you, because I pulled up one of his videos and it was like, sounds your Bernina makes or something like that, right? And the very first tip he said, he talked about oiling the machine. And he had discovered a more effective place to oil it and had gotten the okay from the Bernina manufacturer that, yes, indeed, it was more effective to oil it in this one particular place that the manual doesn't talk about. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So I walked over and I'm like, can't mess it up now. It's messed up. So I took the needle plate off, and I put a speck of oil where he said, you know, you see the hook assembly go around, right? And right there where he said to do it. And all of a sudden, everything, like the hand crank, the knob, was smooth. No noise, no nothing. I was like, it cannot be that simple. So I put the needle plate back on. Put the hoop back in, and she just purred like a kitten. I was like, are you serious? I was ready to pack this whole thing up and send it off to somebody, pay who knows what, and that's what it needed. Yeah, Bernina Jeff is great. Yes. Bernina Jeff saved the day. I was like, thank you, Bernina Jeff. She's been purring like a kitten since then. I've stitched like 8 more labels, and she's just quiet as a button. So now I know, do that one little extra place along with what the manual says. I was getting ready to seize that whole thing up. I think it was getting ready to just like seize up. Now she's just like so quiet, like she's brand new. So yeah, there's that. That happened yesterday. But anyway, long story short, I have some orders to sublimate this afternoon. So that's what I'll be doing. If y'all do a Zoom this evening, I hope you have fun. I might stop in, but just for a second. I kind of want to hit the bed early. That's what I want to do. And but yeah, have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me. Today's clue was super quick, so I've kind of enjoyed just this chatting with you. I appreciate all the prayers and y'all following along in this journey with us. Yeah. One thing about life is you never know what's coming up, do ya? Who would have known we'd be moving? I certainly didn't know that when I planned out this quilt. So you never know, right? You just don't know. Mavis said, I can't get clue 8 to print. Mavis, send me an email. Sometimes, who knows what could be happening. There might be a glitch, and if you send me an email, I'll email it to you directly, and that usually solves the printing issue. Sylvia, you can find the link to my Patreon also in the description box, right? So here's the instructions for finding the links in the description box right there on the screen. Can you recommend a Juki video? Off of the top of my head, no. But, hold on a second. Liz Wilson. Are you talking about like a Juki sewing machine? Because Juki makes long arms too. Are you looking for like a maintenance type of video or just how it works? I just go to YouTube and just type in Juki maintenance, right? Or how to clean a Juki sewing machine, and just start scrolling until I find one that kind of fits what I'm looking for. I don't have a specific one, but Liz, I wrote down your name and the idea, so if I'm scrolling through and I find one, I'll make a note to let you know. My email address is lisacapenquilts@gmail.com. All right, y'all. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Have fun with clue number 8. Post your pictures. We all want to see them. I saw somebody already has clue number 8 all done. Oh, you have the F600, so you have the same one I do. Do you love it? I really love mine. Oh, there you go. Marie said you can go to Juki Junkies on YouTube. They have a great tips and information. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Marie. I'm going to write that down because I didn't even know about them. I'm going to check that out. All right, everybody. I'll see y'all next Friday for sure, okay? Bye, everybody. See you next week.